You're listening to Ecto Portal, a journey into the unknown with Anthony Anderson and Verna Wilson.
I hope that you are seated comfortably with the light turned down and the curtains drawn.
Hello, once again, to another journey into the unexplored, the unexplained Ecto Portal. I'm Anthony Anderson, your host, and I'm here with my co-host,
Verna Wilson.
And today's show is a little different. It's current, it's topical, but it does relate to our show and our subject matters. You actually did this interview, Verna. Why don't you go ahead and explain what would you say is its relation to our show? Why would we do a show on this?
Well, the Oddfellows movement, I wouldn't say movement, the Oddfellows Society has been around for the last 200 years. The Oddfellows Order, has been around for the last 200 years. And Peter has quite a grip on its history, but during the last few years, there's been a lot of events which brought the Oddfellows more into the spotlight, such as the destruction of the Oddfellows Cemetery in Colma, which we're going to be talking about, and also finding the body of a 150-year-old. Finding a body of a little girl that was buried over 150 years ago. And she was buried in the old Oddfellows Cemetery, but it was one of the bodies that was neglected to be moved to the new ground. So the Oddfellows were brought into the spotlight because of this. And we cover all of that. And Peter is a historian. He's an author. He has a lot to talk about, and he has a lot to inform people, all dealing with the Oddfellows movement, the Oddfellows Order, and also there's some paranormal stuff mixed in with that. And when you think about an order that's been around for over 200 years, and there's an old building that's been in San Francisco for a number of years, you're going to get that mixed in.
Yep, and I know part of your conversation is about the relocation grave that was in Colma.
Right.
Was actually neglected and used by some kind of commercial. Was it Home Depot or something where they built stuff on top of it or dumped a lot of stuff on top of it?
I think he said Best Buy.
Best Buy. I thought it was Home Depot and Best Buy, but maybe not.
Well, he'll explain it, but I think that was one of the two.
Just the idea that the Oddfellows their cemetery was basically destroyed, leveled, and they were relocated into a mass grave somewhere else, and then that was neglected and pretty much dumped on, is pretty horrible. That's twice.
It's terrible.
That's twice something's happened to your grave.
And when you hear the story, you're just going to be appalled at how this was treated. So Peter has a lot to say about that, and I highly recommend everybody to hear this interview because you're going to learn a lot about how we treat our dead after, especially graves of people that may have been family members for a couple hundred years.
Family members and even a lot of founders of San Francisco.
Absolutely.
Were probably buried there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a listen. We're going to go ahead and listen to that now.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're ignorant.
They're coming for you, Barbara.
stop it. You're acting like a child.
They're coming for you. Look, there comes one of them now.
This is Verna Wilson from Ecto Portal, and I am going to be interviewing Peter Sellars, who is the Grandmaster of past Grandmaster of the Yerba Buena Lodge number 15. And Peter, thanks for agreeing to do this interview with us. We're very grateful that you're here to tell us the history, and also we have a couple of stories that we want to cover with you about the Oddfellows that we think you would be the best person to talk to about it.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Any questions you have?
Well, let's first start with your background. Let's go ahead and how did you get into the Oddfellows, and what are some of the roles that you've taken being involved with the Oddfellows?
I really didn't want to join the Oddfellows. I wasn't a joiner. I was in the military at that time, and my grandfather kept trying to get me to join a lodge in San Leandro across the bay. And I told him I would join if he paid the dues. And I came in on leave one day, and he had paid the dues. I took their initiation ceremony and became a member. I wasn't active right away, but I slowly became active. They started paying me money to manage their building for certain events, and that's how I got involved. And at the same time, I had retired from the service, and so I wanted to go to college for 5 years, and I did that as well at Cal State Hayward, which is now Cal State East Bay.
Sure.
And after I graduated, I had more free time. This was not the field, managing Oddfellow buildings, that I had in mind. It was more in the corrections area of law enforcement. So that's where I was going to go. But as I became more and more active in the organization, managing the events, managing the property, becoming familiar with building codes and processes with the city, dealing with fire marshals and other entities, I became a professional in that area. You think managing a building isn't something people aspire to. It's something you fall into, and you learned all those aspects. I never heard anybody say, I want to be a building manager when I get out of school. That just doesn't happen. Even with these larger facility managers in downtown San Francisco that manage the 40-story, 60-story buildings, they don't aspire to that, but it falls in their lap and it grows. And I've had those opportunities to manage those buildings as well. So it's an experience you fall into. But I became more and more active in the organization, the Oddfellows.
Now, were your family, did you have a family, besides your grandfather, was it your grandfather you said?
Yes.
Was your family longtime Oddfellows before yourself, and were they involved for a long time before you?
Well, what's ironic is going through the obituaries of my great-great-grandfather, who died many decades ago. He was an Oddfellow in Missouri. So I was surprised, and I felt somewhat, wow, so I have a little connection.
Sure.
But since my joining, I have brought in probably 20 family members over the years. They aren't necessarily active in this lodge in San Francisco, the Yerba Buena Lodge, but they're active in other lodges. So I have brought in quite a few family members over the years, and I try to invite them to our events and get them involved, but they do live out of the area.
Sure. Now, would you say that your background, possibly, I know you said it was law enforcement, but it takes a lot of discipline to manage a lot of buildings and learning the laws and making sure that that things are balanced. Would you say that your time in the military and your time learning law enforcement kind of helped you with the discipline in running an organization and running a few buildings, which obviously take time and energy.
I would say the skills I developed in college is speaking, writing, being able to draft grant proposals,
Sure.
being able to write communications. That all helped. I wanted to keep those skills alive. But what helped me as well was being active on certain boards. And I did belong to this organizations on the state level on their board. I'm still a director after 20 years. I'm still on the board of directors for the Grand Lodge of California, which is located in San Jose. But I learned a lot dealing with the attorneys,
Sure.
how the law is applied. And what I did here, the way I applied that here and dealing with everything we deal with here in San Francisco, San Francisco is very unique, and how we deal with an element outside. We have to be harsh, but we have to be compassionate at
Sure.
the same time. And then again, at the same time, I have to manage this building. There is a way I approach this. I take all those skills, all those lessons, all those laws, everything I've learned over the years. When I step into this building, when I step through those doors,
Sure.
the building is my focus.
Yes.
I'm not deterred. I don't go in any other direction. If it's anything that's broken, I fix it. If it's anything, and I do it the right way. I hire the contractors. I get the permits. I do everything I need to do it the right way, because I want to see how feasible this business is doing it the right way.
Sure.
In a minute, if you ask the question, I can tell you what our biggest hindrances are.
Okay, I will. Then I'll ask you, what are your biggest hindrances in running an organization that's been around for a few hundred years, and a lot of city buildings that's been around almost as couple hundred years?
Nearly 300 years worldwide, over 200 years in America.
Okay.
And we have been here in San Francisco since 1849.
Sure.
And we have been at this spot at 7th and Market since 1882.
And that's something.
Continuous. Yeah. We are part of a continuous membership. And that's something we can talk about, the membership, how that's evolved. But
yes.
My biggest challenges, going back to that, in managing a building, and I'm sure other businesses face this as well.
Sure.
This city are the ordinances that are put upon us, the taxes,
okay. Yeah.
the assessments. We house nonprofits here. Mm-hmm. We don't charge the market rate. Mm-hmm. We want them to survive. We need them to survive. Lions Ballet, the Danish people, the Odd Fellows, the Masons, all the different nonprofits,
right,
that we manage here in the building, that they're tenants. Mm-hmm. Everybody from the second floor up are all nonprofits. The artists, everybody. So we charge a less rate, and each time we incur a new assessment, a tax, an ordinance, a fee, a permit fee for our sign example on the side of the building.
Yes, yes.
We have to pay for that. Sometimes there's an assessment or the sidewalk. Sometimes if we need to get a permit, they charge an extra $8,400 mm-hmm. or a tax increase, which really hurts us. And
yes.
I have to find a way to make that up. And so far, over the last 20 years, plus years I've been here, I managed to make space usable, to lease it out. But I'm running out of space. I don't have any more. And to operate this building, we needed at least a dozen employees. I wanted to increase the employees. We employ more people. Uh-huh. When I came here, there were only 3 employees, and there were only the tenants, the commercial tenants.
Yes.
Since that time, I've taken it to 27 nonprofits, mm-hmm. and we've added up to 12 to 13 employees, and we've given people jobs, and everybody's dependent upon this now, on this project. So our biggest hindrance is the city itself. Now, I hate getting into the politics, which I probably won't here.
I'm sure, though, that there's a lot involved. And do you ever go to town hall meetings?
I used to attend regularly. I used to be the biggest voice out there. I used to be the biggest letter writer. Mm-hmm. and I would try to write as much as I could, document as much as I could,
Sure.
address all the issues I could. Eventually, as you're probably aware, and I don't feel happy about this, but I found that the biggest response was putting my issues on social media, on Facebook. For example,
It does have its place.
For example, the trash that's left out in our the homeless that's not cleaned up, but
Yes.
it's put upon us.
Uh-huh.
The graffiti, the drug addiction,
Yes.
the result of the drug addiction, and I know we have spoken before, and I feel very badly for costing any relationships over that. For exposing that. I also have experience in that background as well, family members who have dealt with drugs. So I've learned, I've come from a perspective of tough love.
Sure.
And I took that through Al-Anon. I took that. I actually went to that because I had family members who were heroin addicts, and I grew up with that as well. But my approach is to confront it and be as aggressively against it as possible. I feel that addressing it and confronting it can actually save somebody's life. By letting it go, the people out there are going to become expendable. They're going to die, as we've been seeing. We're the ones who call 911. We're the ones who say, hey, what do you need? So
Most people just turn the other way.
I know I went in a direction where you weren't headed right
That's
away.
okay. That's
But
okay.
that's another thing we deal with, because the people who come here, the building, for example, going back to the city politics, when trash is left on our building, when litter's left on the building, when windows are scratched or syringes are left on the sidewalk, the city sends us the notice of violation.
Sure.
I'm the one who, representing the corporation, being threatened with a fine.
Yes.
For the blight.
Yes.
For the condition of the building, and for the graffiti that they're going to incur, that I'm going to incur the fine. I'm the one. That's why I'm personally involved. I can't have this out there. We can't afford it. We spent $28,000 last year having a person dedicated every Sunday to come here and address all those issues. $27,000 that was taken away from a philanthropic group that could have put money into Glide Memorial or St. Anthony's or Martin de Porres, like we have been, or putting it into this socks for homeless or different types of programs.
Well, that's kind of the original role of the Oddfellows,
That's what
is to
we
help
do.
the community. But I think the role has gotten larger simply because the problems have gotten larger, and it's no longer the same problems as they were 200 years ago. Now, in regards to helping the problems and working with the subject of the role of the Oddfellows, let's talk about the burials. We used to have Oddfellow cemeteries in the city, and it wasn't so. They weren't so far from here. They were near Civic Center. So tell me the history of those cemeteries and how they moved and where they're located in Colma.
Well, I hope we get this right. I know I've checked the website.
Because they used to be part of the role too, is to bury the dead, and it's still part of the dedication. So I imagine that it's still very much on your mind when it comes to Oddfellow cemeteries and burials.
Exactly, and as you want to go into another facet of my interest is history, and
Yes.
I've addressed those things, ideas, the cemeteries,
Yes.
in particular in my historical documents and books. So the cemeteries, the city used to have, as you know, 32 cemeteries.
Yes.
I think we only have Mission Dolores now and one or two grave sites around the city.
Yeah, I
and that's
think
all we're down to now.
Right.
But they moved those 32 cemeteries to Colma. As you know, the Oddfellows moved before 1934.
Yes.
So their deadline was 1934. They moved to a place, primarily, they moved all over, where the families can move in, but primarily they moved to a cemetery, Green Lawn Memorial Cemetery in Colma.
Yes.
And 28,000. This can be disputed. 26 to 28,000 sets of remains were put into I'm not sure if mass grave is the right definition or large plot. So they were put into one plot.
Yes.
In this plot of land in Colma. And today it's deplorable. Today it's deplorable. I'm not sure if you're aware or how much. I know I post
I'm aware
things.
that it's been vandalized and that a lot of the names and the dates have been wiped out. You can no longer recognize it.
Oh, no, there's nothing. There is nothing. There's a website that was made by the family members. We found a handful of family members, descendants of these remains, these souls that lay there in this, basically a dump, underneath a dump. Every grave marker has been removed. Every identifying marker has been removed, and we're left with one monument amongst mounds of dirt, trash, a flower garden,
disgusting
tractors.
It's terrible.
There's a movement afoot now, and I should look that up for you and give you that website, but it talks all about this issue. And the way this came about, it was my interest years ago, in the early 2000s, when I was doing my research, trying to find more about this plot. All I could do is identify where it was, its location, go to Home Depot in Colma and into the side parking lot and take pictures of the plot. I never realized I thought the plot was in one central location. It took up the entire space that you can see from Home Depot on the east side of Home Depot, where the mound of dirt that Home Depot sits upon, it's the mound of dirt is on the graves as well. I have some pictures here I can show you and get a better visual.
So the only way the family now, the descendants, could identify their loved ones who were buried in those days would be to go to the office and possibly get a chart from back then and kind of chart where the coffin might be, since there's so much vandalism.
Unfortunately, they were removed from the coffins because back then they didn't have vaults, underground vaults, and they were put in small boxes, small wooden boxes.
Okay.
I don't have that size off the top of my head, but there's a description written about each one. But we didn't know any of this, okay? I heard word of mouth from an old 75-year member, who used to tell me about this.
He would have known about that,
by oral history.
Sure.
That's how I learned so much. But remember they unburied the little girl's body?
Yes, I was going to get into that, yes.
When they unburied when they found her body, that triggered an investigation.
Yes.
By historians, enthusiasts. They wanted to know, because there have been other bodies found, not just at the Oddfellows site, but the various sites, the various cemeteries.
Now, didn't they call you and say you're responsible for the costs? Because
no, they didn't. What we did is we volunteered.
Oh, you volunteered?
Yeah, we weren't responsible, but what we did is the right thing, and we did pay the costs. We paid $2,400 immediately to have the grave opened. We kept that quiet to give the nonprofit who handles unidentified remains of adolescents.
Right.
We wanted to give them more exposure, and that was the agreement we had. We weren't there to pull our own chain and say, hey, we're burying her. No, we didn't want to do that, but we provided the headstone.
Yes.
We provided the hearse out of Santa Cruz, one of our Oddfellows cemeteries.
Yes.
And the new coffin. We provided all that. And then right here at the San Francisco Oddfellows Club, they paid the $2,400 right here where we're sitting to have the grave opened. And so everything was paid
Bless
for
her
by
heart.
the
I'm
Oddfellows.
sure her relatives, her living relatives, they found out who she was since then. Edith Cook is her name. I'm sure her living relatives were grateful. Everybody came forth to make sure she was decently.
And we came to that. We attended that ceremony too, and several of our members came there. And I remember I was able to put flowers on top of the grave. And there were so many reporters. It was quite a festive event. But that triggered an investigation, a historical investigation by a man named Alex Snyder. Alex Snyder is not a member of the order. He is the authority on the Oddfellow Cemetery now.
Oh.
I pass the reins because he's it now.
He is an authority on it. In what way? I mean,
well, he just took a keen interest. He's an architect.
He's an architect. Okay.
But he managed to construct a 3D map of the cemetery, and to start plotting graves from photographs, pictures, and using all these different things, notes, every documents. He's plotting out. He has the entire graveyard. The old Oddfellows grave was set on Arguello and Geary. He has the entire cemetery on a 3D map. What was there? Where the columbarium, which was the Oddfellows, we built that, where that sits and where each location of each grave is. And then he took it a step further when he was doing the investigation at Green Lawn. What he discovered is that the owners there didn't want anybody to know about that plot.
Why?
Because they had sold part of it to Best Buy.
Oh my!
They are trying to make a commercial endeavor out of it and hope everybody has forgotten about these 28,000 graves and just simply sell off the property.
Oh my!
Because they closed that part of the cemetery off from the rest of the cemetery. They put a no trespassing sign.
Sure.
And they're highly irritated that we have a new movement that's been pushing and going to the city hall meetings and going to the police department to report. And we reported all this to the Department of Consumer Affairs as well.
Sure.
The cemetery and funeral bureau, whoever.
Yes.
I don't know if I have that correctly titled, but
I know there's a bureau that handles funerals, and in every city. Yeah.
But we, the state, actually, we've been dealing with the state, and then we got everybody to get involved and write letters and trigger these investigations.
Yes.
And now we're to the point where the Grand Lodge of California, we're working on getting its attention. We want them to finance some of this for us and help us, because we're left to suing them now, to suing the Green Lawn Memorial. And it's a legal matter. I don't know how much we could discuss, but what we're asking for is to not only give access to the families and friends. Our first Grand Master, Samuel L. Parker, is buried in there.
Oh,
our first presiding officer from 1853. He's buried there.
Oh.
He's there. We didn't find out, going back to what you asked, we didn't go back. They did not provide, the cemetery did not provide the names or the information.
Well, no, the lodge has records here.
No, we don't.
You don't have the records here?
No, that was a cemetery association.
Okay.
Which was a separate entity of the Oddfellows.
Sure.
So what they did, Alex did, he was able to go to other nonprofits and he found a listing of all the people interred in that grave from the San Francisco Public Library, 6th floor, their historical section.
Oh, yeah, that's a good section, the archive section.
And we have donated quite a bit over the years to them, too.
Sure.
I have used that for my books as well.
They're a very valuable archive source. Yeah.
Plus, he used other sources, lots of sources. He was able to put this together. This list is now online on the website, which I'll look up in a minute. But it's on a website.
On which website?
That's what I'm going to get up. The family members made a website concerning this whole despicable situation at Green Lawn Memorial, where all these graves are unmarked. We actually, the day we went down, there's a gentleman called Rene Monet. He's from France.
Yes.
He has 12 family members. Or, excuse me. He has his grandparents there, and I'm not sure how many others. The other gentleman, John Rector, has 12 family members in that section too. He's the one who built the website. But when Renee and myself went to the Colma Police Department, we went there because we had no other choice. The state said it was a criminal matter, not a to desecrate a grave. It's a criminal matter, not a civil matter. So what we did, we went to file a police report. Well, within an hour after that meeting, we were telling them about all the headstones or grave markers that were removed and tossed along the fence line, showing them pictures, providing evidence. Within an hour of leaving the police department, we drove over to Home Depot, and I have a video, which is now on that website, of them loading up all of the grave markers and taking them away in a tractor.
Oh my!
But it's on live, so the police had called them to ask them, we have a complaint here, do you have head markers? They loaded up all the head markers and took them away, all the headstones and took them away.
Good Lord.
I'm going to look this up as we talk.
Yeah,
but Alex,
I would like you to give the name of that website and have people look it up, and then I have a couple questions about how we can further help this situation.
Okay.
Now, have the lodges across the country do they know about this, and have they tried to work with this lodge to help see if there can be something done?
We don't get again. The only thing we can do is I use social media once again to share the word. All we do is get similar views, and they really can't do much.
Right.
We're at a point now, if we want to change this and ask for all the markers to be restored, ask for access to the space, ask for a lawn to be placed on top of the graves, and have all the commercial flower growing removed from the plot, that we need to sue them.
Yeah.
That's the only thing left at our means. We're going to have to sue them.
Yeah.
And we're to that point now. The Grand Lodge of California has authorized us to use authorized us up to $10,000 to go approach an attorney. That's not a lot of money, because what we're being told and what most people know, to go to court today, and
it's very expensive.
It's 6 figures.
Absolutely.
And so we are proposing right now. I don't know how well it'll go or come across. We're proposing now, a group of us. We're proposing a resolution that Grand Lodge asks for much, much more.
Yes.
I don't know if we have it. I don't know if the grand body, those are the representatives from all of our lodges throughout the state of California. I don't know if they would vote for it, because they have their own cemeteries. They have their own areas in historical cemeteries.
Peter, what is the website where you can take a look at the story and what's to be done about this vandalism with the Oddfellows site and the Oddfellows grave site in Colma?
If you want to see everything that's been done by Green Lawn Memorial in Colma, and the complaints and the evidence that's been presented by the family members and the investigators, the site you want to look up, just put in a search, all one word, Oddfellows Cemetery Colma. Oddfellows Cemetery Colma.com.
Okay.
Oddfellows Cemetery Colma.com.
Okay, so they go to that website.
And it will give you a detailed investigation, videos, photographs, listings, results of investigations, correspondences with the cemetery owners, the manager, our goals, and what the status is now. It's updated every few months as we get more supporting evidence. Remember, this was done in 1934, so
sure,
time has passed. But I think we've put together a pretty good case.
Yeah, I think you have, and definitely as more comes to light about it, the case will get even stronger. Because I think it's easier to trace something and build something back together since 1934, even though a lot of the history and the graves go back way before that. And if somebody, now for the listeners, if somebody wanted to help, what would you recommend they do? And are they able to send donations to help bring this back together the way it should be?
Well, as I mentioned, it would take a lawsuit unless the cemetery miraculously agreed to do everything to restore it, restore the markers, put in a lawn, take the existing businesses off the graves, quit driving across the graves, quit storing vehicles, remove the dump, remove the pile of dirt. If they wanted to restore this grave, the person to contact is Jack Crispin, Crispen, Jack Crispin. His number is 707-485-2491. 707-485-2491. Jack is the lead on this project as far as hiring legal counsel and learning more of what we can do. We know it's going to cost a lot of money. We don't know if we're going to get any more money from a parent corporation, but I know we're going to need a lot of money if we are going to take this on in a civil court. But Jack is definitely the contact. We've all decided, there's a group of us, to make him the point man. He's the one who made contact with the attorneys, and again, call his number.
Okay. Have you reached out to some, I'm not sure what they can do, but have you reached out to some websites that specialize in graves, such as Find a Grave? And because I know that they talk about restoring grave sites, and they have people who are experts at this type of thing.
We have looked at things, but there's little that even they could do as long as you have a reluctant cemetery manager who doesn't even want to allow us to trespass.
Okay.
Loved ones can't even go to the monument that's in the center of this plot of land. They're not even allowed in there.
That's sad, that tall monument.
What if we had our grandparents in there? I'm not even a family member, and I'm taking an interest because of historical preservation, just out of respect for someone who once existed here. Those
yes,
remains.
These people were active here at one point.
We need a place to honor them. We need a place to remember them. And if my grandfather was there, my family member, I would want a place to come and remember them, and to just have a solemn place to sit and think. And we don't get that.
Yeah, and actually, if the people who were active here, I mean, if their families were here, still some of their descendants, and you never know, they would say, they would want to visit their loved one's grave, and they can't now.
And this is what the ones who we do know have families there are saying that. There are
still some people here who
they are upset.
I bet they are.
They're the ones who are creating these websites. And we're supporting them. We want them to support. We come out and speak. I went to the police department. I went to City Hall with others. I wrote about it because I take an interest as a historian and for their cause. And as more members do, we can see when we post this on social media that people care.
Yes.
But how much can they really do?
How much can they do?
It's going to come to, unfortunately, this is America, and it's going to come down to the mighty dollar to get something changed, to get something affected, to make these people who are the Greek cemetery, who owns it, to make them do the right thing, it's going to take a legal action. They're not doing the right thing. This is all a money endeavor for them. They're in the business of burying bodies and making money off the dead, off of us. You know, they have you in a compromising position. Cemeteries take advantage. Green lawn takes advantage. So that's...
It's a very sad story, but I'm glad it's coming to attention, and if we could bring it...
It's capitalism at its worst.
Yeah, at its worst, I agree. And if we could, and I'm glad we're doing this show, because if we could bring it to people's attention and something, and it can bring it to light and something more can be done, I think it's a very noble cause, and it's just respect. I mean, it's respect for someone you care about. If it were think about it. If it were your family member, what would you do? And
exactly. And we should at least lend moral support.
It's a moral issue.
You don't have to give so much in the way of money, even though it's going to become useful at some point.
Right.
If we're going to be able to change this, but also moral support. What we found is that the cemetery was relying on people forgetting, and then letting this property go as a commercial use and never telling anybody, never disclosing that there are 28,000 bodies sitting 6 feet below the dirt.
They underestimated people who really care about the order. They really underestimated that.
If you look at the website, you will see how much they've. It almost makes me want to go on there and read some of those things to you to get you emotionally charged, because I could make you emotionally charged by the things they have said.
Read a few.
I'll read one.
Read one or two.
Let's find one.
And then I want to ask you some questions about...
There's one. Here's one of the counselors at the cemetery. The bodies under the rows of crops are from a different time in our history when the city would send us bodies. That area has nothing to do with the cemetery. It's not anyone's business. That's what she told one of the family members. And that's by Denia Dukas, counselor at Greenlawn Cemetery. And that's quoted on the website.
My.
I mean, that's pretty cold to tell a family
That's pretty
member.
Brutal.
So go ahead and look at the website. It gets far worse. You'll have pictures of the markers that are left by the fence. Well, those are the markers they moved.
See that.
Within an hour of reporting it to the police. They moved them all and got rid of them. There's a mound of dirt. There's trucks. They're all sitting on.
It's a very sad sight.
This is a business. No trespassing. Dogs are in the yard.
Oh my.
It goes on. There's just so many
issues to confront with that. Yep. Yeah, I'm glad. I really hope we can loan some moral support, and you never know, maybe monetary support will come too along with it, because that would definitely help. But I wanted to go ahead and turn to another subject, since we're a show that deals with the paranormal and the supernatural. Now, I realize that not every Oddfellow believes in that sort of thing, but it has a very long mystical history, and this is a very old lodge. You've been in this building for ages and years, more than most people have. Have you ever had any experiences in this building that you feel is worth telling about?
We have had experiences. You know, when you experience something, you chalk it up, oh, that was really strange, and you move on. And so recalling every experience, all I can tell you is, I'm going to tell you a couple, but
tell us the one that stands out the most.
The one that stands out the most. We were in the lobby. One of the elevator operators. We keep our door in our lobby locked. Mm-hmm. It goes to the basement. That leads to the basement, and it's latched. I mean, when we shut it, it's latched. It's locked. You can't. It's not something that's going to unlatch itself. Mm-hmm. And I kept coming to the lobby and asking the elevator, "Why are you opening this door?" and he kept telling me, "No, I didn't open it." 30 minutes later, I came down there. It was open again. I said, Robert, why is this door open? And we latched it. And look, it's latched. It doesn't open. So we left it at that. And lo and behold, third time, it was open again. And I said, well, I'm going to go to the camera because we have a camera aimed right at that spot. And I wish we would have recorded it, but Robert and I saw it. We know it's real.
Yeah,
we know it happened.
And I know it's hard to convince Robert unless he was there. Yeah.
Robert and I watched the video, and lo and behold, nobody was there. That door opened itself.
It opened itself.
And it swung all the way open. And the door doesn't naturally
So somebody
swing.
was there, just not visible to the eye.
It doesn't swing. Nobody else was there. Nobody was in the basement at that time. It doesn't open on it. But it did.
Sure.
And we had it on video. It just went all the way. And we both looked at each other and we knew there was an entity here.
Yes.
We believed.
Yes.
We believed. That made us believe. Because I can tell you, it hasn't happened again.
Sure.
But that particular night, it happened. And it kept opening. And nobody was playing a game with us. So it was opening. On other occasions, when I used to live in the city, and I'd work quite late.
Sure.
And this is before I was married. And I would sleep right here in the clubroom.
Oh,
sometimes.
sure. Yeah, sometimes.
I have to tell you, I have heard people
footsteps,
walking above my head.
Sure.
As if, and I'd go up there, there would be nobody. And this has happened many times. And what I have become used to, I walk through the building in the dark now. I know this building. And I can tell you, I will hear sounds in this building that are beyond the normal.
Right.
Paranormal.
Yes.
I have to tell you, there are entities in this building.
I believe it.
I feel it. I feel it when I'm here after hours.
Yes, we've experienced a couple incidents ourselves, so I understand.
I know there was a gentleman. I'm not sure if anyone was aware, but when they reconstructed this building after the earthquake, they rebuilt it, and he fell. He was a Canadian, in his early 30s. He fell and he died in the basement floor.
Oh, that's sad.
So he died in this building, and I'm not sure if anybody ever tried to make contact with that, if he's still here.
What was his name?
Oh, I forget the name, but it's in my book.
Sure.
In the history of the Oddfellows.
Maybe we could try someday.
Yeah, but it's in the book, and
give him some closure.
But there have been. I'm unaware of deaths in recent years, but in the past, I know a few people have died on the property over the years. Before this newer building was built.
I believe that.
But there are entities here, and I believe in it, and I know it, and so does Robert.
Yes.
We know an entity exists here. We know it because things have happened. Things have been moved. Things have, as I said, the doors move. The lights go on or off. There are things that happen at certain times that when nobody is around. These experiences were mainly noises. When I used to spend the night here, when I worked late, and they were so vivid. The noise was so pronounced that somebody had to be here.
Sure.
So I know there are entities here. I know there are. And from that incident with the door, I know that particular night, two of us are quite aware of an entity in this building. And so
yes,
we have felt it. We felt the presence. We have heard it. We have seen it. We've seen it through that door. I wish I would have saved the video, but yes, I'm a strong believer in the paranormal, and I would invite anybody to investigate here.
That would be great. Mm-hmm. Now, I have a question for you about the museum. I've told people about this, and they're a little mortified, and some of them are fascinated. There is an actual skeleton with the suit on. I guess that was his burial suit of a former Oddfellow here who wanted to donate his body to the lodge. Do you know something about the history of that? And rather, I know that not everybody could see that unless they have access to the museum, but tell me about the history of that and why he decided to go ahead and donate his body to the lodge.
I'll tell you this: it's not somebody who donated their body, but I'm not going to say that hasn't happened because we have had evidence of that in other lodges.
Okay.
But here, what they did through the 1870s to about the 1920s
Sure.
is you would be able to go online, or not online, but search a catalog.
Time traveler, I'm just kidding.
You would be able to search a catalog and purchase a what we call a scene. It's actually one of our secrets of our organization, but it's okay in this context. What we do is what we did at that time. We would purchase the remains, an articulated skeleton from a source, and each lodge had to have one because the main lesson of our organization, which is given in the initiatory degree, is of mortality.
Okay.
To show that this is what we become at the end of our lives.
Okay.
That we're only here for a very short time.
Right.
And we're going to become this. And that's a very strong lesson.
It's a very strong message.
When you have an
for
actual
sure. Yeah.
set of real remains in front of that person.
Oh, yeah.
It's more pronounced. The impact is made when it's done properly, when the degree is done properly, not by video, not by words, by people dramatically coming across during a degree ceremony, which there will be one tonight in St. Helena.
Oh.
I'm going to watch one. But those skeletons were used for that purpose. For the historical purposes, the museum has one to show that particular need for the lodges. Today, most lodges no longer have the real remains. Because some members feel a little bit queasy, they don't want the real remains. Some people,
but this lodge does, and I've seen it.
Yeah, well, this building does in the museum,
Right, in the museum. Yes,
we're fortunate to have one because in today's in California, you're not able to purchase them anymore. They're illegal to have, but we have had these for over 150 years. 140 years, so these belong to us.
Yes.
We're not selling it. We're not giving it away.
You do have some wonderful artifacts here.
It's here for educational purposes in our museum, and we're happy to have it so we can also show you what we do and the impact of seeing that live skeleton. It's
a very, I think it's a very cool piece of Oddfellow history, along with all the other artifacts, including some from the earthquake back in that museum. Now, what I would like to ask, if somebody wants to become an Oddfellow and get involved in the lodges today, what is the process on applying? Because people have so many questions. I know you have to sponsor somebody, but there's different ways to become involved. So go ahead and tell somebody, our listeners, the different ways to get involved with the Oddfellows.
Well, since your show is so expansive, what your listeners to know is that each region is different across this country, around this world.
Sure.
There are different requirements for, let's say, for joining a lodge in Finland or Sweden or Germany or England. Here we have different lodges that are different places that have different beliefs. You'll find in the South they believe in different things. In the East I hate to bring it up because we don't bring it up in our organization, but there are different political beliefs, social
I do
norms.
Believe that, yeah.
So you're going to find different lodges, different makeups of people. Here, San Francisco, I'm proud to say that we're inclusive, totally inclusive. I've never seen anybody rejected. We seek women in our lodges. We seek men. We seek people of all beliefs, all backgrounds.
There's a lot of different backgrounds of the lodge members here.
I know it's a long way of coming around, but if you're in a certain region, let's say you're in the Bible Belt of Missouri or Iowa, maybe that lodge maybe have more pronounced religious beliefs, that group of people you're going to be around. Rather, I'm not saying we don't have spiritual beliefs out here, but maybe a little bit different.
Sure.
But so you need to look for that type of lodge that appeals to you. And the way you can do that, you can physically go to a lodge and approach somebody, and you can physically go to that lodge, make contact. Usually the meeting nights are listed on their doors or in their windows, and you can come that particular night and meet someone and ask for an application.
Yes.
The application process is quite easy. If you came here to San Francisco, you can just approach one of the elevator operators who would put you in contact with me, because I'm primarily here all day to greet people and to hand out applications. It's 1 page long. You just list your name, address, and contact information. You really don't have to know anybody in the lodge. Any lodge member can sponsor you, and there's a fee. You can, here, for example, in our lodge, Yerba Buena, it's $56.
Okay.
You apply by submitting the application with the fee. Here in the building, we have several mailboxes. The lodge you would want that you're associated with, and I'm associated with, is Yerba Buena Lodge number 15.
Number 15, yes.
It started in 1853, so we've been around continuously for a very long time. And you look outside our doors, it's made up of the people of San Francisco. That's who we represent.
Yeah.
So that it's easy, or you can go online and find an online application at the website CAIOOF, as in Frank.org.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, Peter, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you very much for all of your insight and for bringing to our attention the sad state of the Oddfellows' grave in Colma. And thank you for telling us your experiences. And we hope that our listeners will learn more about Oddfellow history, and perhaps we might have more people involved. So I appreciate it, and if we have anybody asking questions or posting anything that they need to ask you, we will certainly bring it to your attention.
Okay, it's been a pleasure.
All right, so it's interesting that I know when we did our show at the Oddfellows building in the station in the basement, we've had experiences ourselves there.
We have.
Paranormal.
We have. I think I covered a little bit of those experiences with Peter, but why don't you go ahead, just for the audience's sake, cover your experience that you had when we were downstairs in that basement.
The three that I could think of, I was by myself, which is ironic, isn't it? The first time I was left the studio prepping to do our show. We were a few minutes before you had shown up and we were going to go on the air. And I walked across the basement. Nobody else was in the basement but me, towards the restrooms. And I see dart to the left, out of the corner of my eye on the left, far corner of the room, a guy in a kind of a gray hoodie. And it was contemporary clothes. It wasn't like period clothes or anything.
Right.
It was a guy in a hoodie, darted past, and there was nobody there. But I clearly saw him for a second. And I described that guy to you that one time. The next time I was in the studio, again, there's two studios side by side. The next studio was dark, and it was black, and nobody was doing their show in there. But you can see there's a window that separates the two, and you can see a reflection of the window and then the office on the other side. I was, setting up stuff, looking around in general. I glance up at the window and I see somebody standing in the window in the reflection of the other studio. And I thought, oh, weird. I thought there was nobody in that studio. And I turn, I look, and the lights are off and nobody's in the studio. But I see someone's reflection standing in the window, in the reflection of the window.
I remember when that happened.
And then I looked back and it was gone. The third time, you weren't there yet. I'm sitting in there prepping. I'm in the studio. And where I'm sitting faces the door to the studio. The door's open. And you can see when people walk past the studio in front of it. Nobody else was down there. And I'm kind of sitting there, listening to the show before us, because they'll air our shows, sometimes old shows or other people's shows from the station before ours. And I look, and someone walks past the doorway. And I thought, oh, there is somebody down here. So I got up, walked the 2 feet, poked my head out the door. There's nobody there. Mm-hmm. And that hallway's long. You would see somebody who was leaving.
I do know that hallway.
And I walked around the corner. There's nobody there. There's nobody in the restroom. There was nobody else down there except me. So somebody walked by that door. So those are the 3 I had by myself.
I do describe in the interview some of my experiences, but just to recap a little bit of them, I do recall a couple of experiences with you. Mm-hmm. You and I were sitting at that long table, that long table, and we were going over the show before we went in the studio, and then all of a sudden we both sit up, and we looked, and somebody walked past really quick, and it was the same guy with the hoodie, with the gray hoodie.
Yep.
We said, "Who's that?" We both said it at the same time. Who was that?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And this was when we were first starting Ecto Portal. And then I remember you and I were in the studio by ourselves again, and we were sitting there, and we were on a break, and we were talking in between the break, and then all of a sudden we look and there's a reflection in the window, and somebody's walking by, just like you described.
Yep.
And there was the guy with the hoodie again, and we said, "Is there somebody in the next room?" But there wasn't.
Yeah.
And then I do recall we had our guest, Rebecca Boyd, who's a psychic on the show, and she was coming in, and we thought somebody was on the other side talking on a cell phone. You know how you hear chattering? Somebody's talking.
It was up by the restroom, wasn't it?
This was by the restroom.
Yep, I remember
and
that.
And you come down those stairs, and there's the restrooms, there's the elevators right there, and you hear we heard somebody talking, and I thought, oh, someone's talking on a cell phone, and they're here downstairs. But there wasn't anybody there. And then Rebecca said she heard the same thing.
So did I.
Yeah, and you heard the same thing?
In fact, I went back and looked to see if somebody was on their phone. There was nobody else down
there. Was nobody there. And then Linda Walker, who was joining us as the news lady at the time, she came down the stairs and she heard the same thing too.
And they were different voices than the one she hears every day.
Right, different voices than the one she hears in her head every day. That's right. So I recalled that with Peter, but I'm telling the full story here. So lots of interesting stories.
Nothing threatening, nothing malevolent, none of that. Just, it's funny because it's the same sighting that we had so many times with the same guy. Clearly the guy in the hoodie lives there in some capacity.
Or he's from the area, and that's an area that he's passed by. Mm-hmm. Who knows who he was, but...
That's true.
Yeah, but that area there's a lot of old buildings in that area, so I'm not surprised we get that much activity. And with as much as the Oddfellows has been around, you have to, I think it's kind of normal to experience something.
Well, I know the Market Street Theater that used to be down the block.
Uh-huh.
There used to be, back in the day, a lot of homeless that would live down in the basement.
Oh, right.
Because there's parts of the basement that the people in the Market Street Theater, which was a strip club later in life, but it was a United Artists Theater before that. And there's an old theater actually inside of it that's literally been built around, which is a beautiful theater that nobody ever got to see. They ripped that sucker down so fast.
Oh, that's too bad.
But there were stories on the internet of people who've gone in there, and there's literally homeless communities living in that basement. So, and they said they wouldn't be surprised if people died down there, OD'd, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, I mean, that's just down the street. So who's to say on Market Street what's around? But,
right. What spirit activities around there that goes undetected.
But I mean, the new Oddfellows building was rebuilt after the earthquake. Obviously, the fire department had to level it to put out the fires that they couldn't. Mm-hmm. So it was for nothing.
Right.
So all the old brick foundation in the Oddfellows building is still the original bricks from the earthquake. They just used it to rebuild the rest of the foundation again.
And you can still see it. Yeah,
Yep.
You can still see the wall.
But yeah, that's an interesting interview, and hopefully, if you want to know more, obviously the website Peter gave you, you can go and check out the whole story.
Yeah, please check it out and please
find out ways
see
to
what
donate.
you can do. Yeah.
It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. The fact that somebody's making money off of this endeavor and still wants to pursue making money off of it and pretend it doesn't exist, to me is even worse.
It's very pitiful.
It is.
Yeah.
All right. That's the show for this week. And until next week, we'll see you then.
Bye. See you next week.
Royalty-free, copyright-free music by Kevin MacLeod and Ross Bugden.